Hallo, einen wunderschönen guten Morgen. Schön, dass Sie dabei sind. Auch ich begrüße Sie ganz herzlich zum Forum Offene Stadt. Ich bin Melanie Stein, Journalistin und Moderatorin und darf Sie heute durch diesen Tag führen. Und wir wollen heute vor allen Dingen gemeinsam diskutieren, wie die Zukunft der Städte aussehen soll. Wir werden uns spannende Beispiele anhören aus Städten von anderen europäischen Städten. Aber natürlich werden wir auch ganz genau auf Deutschland schauen und auch diskutieren, was vielleicht die neue Bundesregierung anpacken sollte. Und wie wir schon gehört haben von Sven Tetzlaff, ist es wunderbar, wäre es ganz, ganz toll, wenn Sie alle mitmachen. Und zwar haben wir zum einen, nutzen wir das Tool Slido. Und wenn Sie mögen, können Sie einfach auf slido.com gehen und dort einfach FOS 21 eingeben, also für Forum Offene Stadt. Und da wird sich so eine Art Chat-Funktion öffnen und da können Sie alle Fragen reinschreiben, die Sie haben. Und ich werde versuchen, heute im Laufe des Tages so viele wie möglich ranzunehmen. Und natürlich können Sie auch gerne twittern unter dem Hashtag FOS 2021. So, und los geht's jetzt mit einer Frau, die schon seit langer Zeit sich dafür einsetzt, dass so wie Straßen oder die Wasserversorgung auch Daten zum öffentlichen Gut gehören. Sie ist Präsidentin des italienischen Nationalen Innovationsfonds. Sie ist Professorin am University College in London und bekannt wurde sie vor allen Dingen als Chef Digital Technology und Innovation Officer der Stadt Barcelona, als es ihr 2015 gelang, ein ganz besonders großes Experiment im Bereich digitale Demokratie durchzuführen. Herzlich willkommen und viel Spaß mit Francesca Bria.
Hi, hello. It's great to be there with you. Shall I just...
You can just start.
Yes, okay. Sorry, I don't really speak German yet, so I have to do it in English. So it's a great pleasure to be here. And my talk is going to focus on how we can build cities that are based on data democracy, on citizens' participation, and in particular are able to tackle some of the greatest environmental and social challenges that we are facing as society, in particular, of course, climate change and the ecological transition, so putting sustainability at the very core of how we are shaping the future of cities. So first, let me say that I think in this pandemic phase, we do have a new opportunity to think about technology and innovation in a new way, in a more democratic and sustainable way, and to give it a new direction for the future. So we all realized that during the pandemic times, how much digitization has accelerated in our life, with increasing smart working, distance education, the use of contact tracing application, and lots of digital tools to tackle the pandemic. So increasingly digitizing healthcare and also using all kinds of e-commerce and applications for food delivery and all kinds of things that we do in our daily life. However, it is important to understand that accelerating digitization is not enough. We have to be able to give it a direction as a society and to shape technological progress, to put technology, connectivity, data, and artificial intelligence at the service of people and the ecological transition. And this is really what I call digital sovereignty, which means that as a society, we should regain in democratic control of digital technologies, and we should be able to really use and leverage the big power that these technologies can unleash in society, the collective intelligence of people that can be unleashed via this kind of innovation to really shape our future, to make it climate neutral, to make it more sustainable, inclusive, and democratic. This is, of course, a very big challenge. And I think in this context, in particular now, where exactly we cannot leave things as they are. Wars or pandemic can sometimes feed the social imagination. And we need forward-looking ideas that are able to transform our economy and society, projecting us into this more digital, zero-emission future that is also democratic. In this context, I think that cities have a very, very important role. I think that cities will be the political and economic unit that in the future will be actually able to take this more positive direction for our societies and economies and create some kind of real laboratory for sustainable and democratic innovation. Because cities are in proximity with citizens, so they're closer to their daily life and their daily problems, but also they can have the agility and be effective in implementing and testing alternative kind of production method, alternative models that can be scaled beyond even the city level. And I want to stress that this is an absolutely critical moment, in particular because Europe is focusing on addressing this twin transition that we have, the green and digital transition, and putting it as much as possible together, because it is about using digital technologies to attain both social and environmental sustainability. And I think this is very important also in the context of what we think the smart city or a digital green city should be in the future. Because in fact, I think we should be able to reject a model that is about technological determinism or technological solutionism. We should not start technology first. We shouldn't start with, connectivity, data, the blockchain, 5G, artificial intelligence, and then ending up solving technology problems. We should start with the real questions that matter to people for their daily life. We should start with questions around, for instance, how we reduce inequalities, how we address the question of affordable housing, sustainable healthcare, sustainable mobility, the ecological transition, how we create more green and public spaces, how we are able as society to drastically reduce carbon emissions and to stay within the 1.5 degrees. Otherwise, we will have basically a human task that it's not achievable anymore as a society. So we should put people first. And not top-down technology first. So moving away from a technology solutionist mindset. And this is a very important starting point. We should be asking for whom we are designing the smart cities, for whom we are designing the future, the cities of the future. And also we should ask questions about the ownership of the new asset, of the digital infrastructures. Who is going to own the data in the smart cities? What we do with the data? What kind of problems we are going to address? So to give concrete examples, when I was the Chief Technology Officer of the city of Barcelona, we really tried to build this digital democracy and the city that it's really ecological, that is modern, that uses digital technologies to empower people, to unleash the collective intelligence of people, and try to put all these potentials at the service of really solving the big political, social, and ecological problems that the city needs to tackle. So what we've done in the first place is a large-scale experiment of participatory democracy. So I'm sure you've heard about that because Barcelona became famous all over the world for this kind of experimentation. I have to say that at the very core of the participatory democracy model of the city of Barcelona there was the intention from Mayor Ada Colau. She became the first the first female mayor of Barcelona, and she was elected into power with a very social agenda coming from a citizens platform. So she wanted to make participation and real democratic participation of citizens the DNA of the Barcelona model. And what this meant is also that we thought that we had to regain trust from people. And also we wanted to reshape a new relationship between people and public institutions, people and the government, in order to devolve more power to people about decision-making, but also to make communities more involved, actively involved in shaping the future of their city. Because of course, when we're talking about how we rethink urban planning, how we transform mobility, how we create new public spaces, how we transform our education, our healthcare. It's really about changing the city from below together with citizens. So we managed to put in place a hybrid model of participatory democracy. Hybrid because it is participatory with some elements of direct democracy, but also strengthening the representative democracy. And also because it was a hybrid between online participation and offline participation. So when we think about digital democracy, we never have to think about a Facebook democracy. Actually, now they're called Meta. We don't have to think about, we click here and we change something. I mean, this is not what we have in mind when we talk about digital democracy. What we have in mind is a really more complex participatory model that is a hybrid between engaging people and communities where they live, in their neighborhood as communities, and also then through a citizens' democratic digital platform, give more possibilities to people to participate, express their opinion, deliberate, and then also vote on different options. So in Barcelona, around 400,000 citizens engage in shaping the city agenda. And more than 70% of the proposals that became the action plan of the city of Barcelona came directly from citizens. And the platform that we used, I think maybe we can discuss this later in our conversation. I think it's a very good example of an open source, privacy enhancing, rights preserving technology that was built locally by a community of open source and free software developers, by citizens that were participating in shaping the way that this platform had to work. So it's really owned by the citizens of Barcelona, and it was enabled to scale worldwide. So in fact, today, Decidim Barcelona, which is decidim.org, is an open source platform for participatory democracy that is used in more than 80 cities around the world. More than 20 countries are using it. But in particular, for Europeans, it is important to know that this is the platform that is now used for the Conference on the Future of Europe by the European Council, the European Parliament, and the European Commission. So it became the de facto standard for participatory democracy in Europe. At the moment, as we speak, it has been translated in all the European languages, and it is used by thousands, hundreds of thousands of people across Europe that are engaging in a participatory democracy exercise to shape the future of Europe. Why I emphasize this? Because sometimes we think that technologies that are built open source, locally in a city or across cities with communities cannot scale. This is not the case. In fact, if you use open standards, if you use interoperability, if you use ethical standards that enable people to preserve their privacy, their data protection, and so they create trust with the platform, these technologies can actually scale, and they can become pan-European, and they can scale beyond. So moving forward, I just want to mention a few things before getting into deeper into the question of data democracy, which is one of the questions I've been tackling with deeper in my work in Barcelona and beyond, also at the European Commission level, and now with my work that I'm doing at the moment. So I think that as I said at the very beginning, it is important to understand that a smart city, it is not, actually maybe we should get rid of this name. We should talk about digital, green, and democratic cities that we are building. But in fact, it is not about introducing more technology. If we look at the most successful projects that cities are implementing today, I think they are at the frontier of building ambitious climate action and enabling energy transition. So building net zero carbon cities of the future. I think this should be our collective goal, because this is the most urgent goal and the most urgent challenge that we're facing as humanity. And I think if we do not build sustainable neighborhoods that are designed to manage both climate change and future pandemics, and reshape our cities to become greener, to decarbonize, to really introduce a new model for living in our cities, I think we're not going to make it. And we're not going to lower, of course, carbon emission, CO2 emissions by 50% in 2030, and we are not going to become net zero by 2050. So I think cities are going to be absolutely critical in making sure that the Green Deal and the targets that Europe is setting in their regulation, in their standards, in their laws and so on, become concrete projects together with citizens that are changing the way we live and we work and we move around cities and we eat and so on. So it should be real, and cities are driving this change. For example, when we look at the Barcelona super block, maybe you've heard about this project, we managed to completely rethink urban planning and to basically take back, give streets back to the residents. So we recuperated 70% of the soil of the public space, where before there were cars. We removed cars from the city centers. And instead of cars, now you have green blocks. So the cars can only circulate around the block. They cannot enter the city center. And we managed to have, much more green areas, to introduce new bicycle lanes and space for pedestrians, but really to introduce also a different cultural and social model, because in these renewed urban spaces that are given back to the residents, you need to build new businesses, you need to build new, public green space. So you need to also rethink the social life around the city. And this has been now implemented in more than 16 districts in the city of Barcelona. And I think it's one of the most interesting and successful projects. This is now being, discussed in Glasgow at the UN summit as one really important achievement. And I think that this completely rethinking of their urban planning and removing cars from the city centers and moving to a sustainable, connected electric mobility, introducing new public spaces, introducing electric bicycles, introducing pedestrian space is a project that is common to many cities around Europe and around the world. And in fact, today we talk about the 15-minute cities. What it is a model of a city where citizens have access in proximity, can access their basic essential services. So they don't need to commute So far, they don't need to, cross the city to access to the basic services they need, but they can have it within the distance of 15 or 30 minutes, depending on how the city urbanistic environment is structured. And this is now happening in Milan, is happening in Madrid, is happening in Paris, of course, is happening in Amsterdam, and in other cities around Europe. For example, when it comes to building carbon neutral cities, I think it's also important to talk about what the city of Helsinki is doing. They have some really ambitious climate goal to lower more than 80% of their emissions by 2035. They have a strategy that encompasses elements from sustainable traffic solutions, reducing, density and traffic planning, more energy and efficient buildings, so taking the entire carbon footprint of constructions into account, and promote even wooden construction, so transforming the built-in environment, moving to clean energy productions and replacing fossil fuels by building heating plants that run on renewable energy. They are moving to a smart and clean economy, so kind of thinking these circular economy models. And then they're putting all these policies that they're doing in an open policy, in open access, so that other cities can replicate these solutions. I want to mention Helsinki, but also there's Copenhagen and many other cities that are having these amazing plans at the moment. And I think we should look deeper into what is happening in this space. And for me, at the moment, one of the really exciting things that is happening in cities is the ability to couple this like net zero strategy with data democracy and citizen participation. So since I'm running out of time, I want to focus on the question of data. So obviously, when we talk about the smart city and the digital city, central question is who owns the data. So the data is the raw material of the digital economy. As we know today, data is concentrated in the hands of few big tech companies. Some are Chinese, some are US tech companies from Silicon Valley, but it's very concentrated, and it's creating a lot of market value for these companies. In fact, people like Zsuzsanna Zubow from Harvard talk about surveillance capitalism as the business model of our times, where, it's under surveillance capitalism, she says, you are not the customer or even the product, you are the raw material. So in fact, a lot of these companies, the business model of the digital platform, it is based on the manipulation and monetization of personal information and data. I think we should move from data extractivism and from surveillance capitalism to a model where data is considered a digital public good. Data can be considered like a public infrastructure, a meta utility, a common good. In fact, we are very much working towards building city data commons, and data can be, controlled in a democratic way more directly from citizens. So I think the big question here is, in the future, who is going to control this raw material of the digital age? It is going to be the big tech. Is it going to be the state? In a centralized way. So I always talk about the two models that we have today in our digital future, the big tech from Silicon Valley and the big state from China. And I think that both models are not really suited for a liberal democracy, for a society that puts first people's fundamental rights, their civil liberties, the right to information self-determination, the right to privacy, and our ability to democratically control what happened to our data, which is basically who we are as citizens, and also our capacity to create public value. So to use data in a sense that enable us, first of all, to decide in a more democratic way, so to create more awareness, to give more power to people, but also we need this data to tackle all the big environmental and social problems that I've been talking about. To move to a carbon neutral city, we need data. We need to know what's happening in our cities. We need to know if we are lowering consumption of electricity, thermal use, if we are lowering pollution, CO2 emissions. We need to know a lot of information about what's happening in the city. So I think in Barcelona, we've been building a model where we are betting on the ability of citizens to be able to control this data and to be able to decide what data they want to keep private, what data they want to share, with whom they want to share with data, and on what terms. So this is really reestablishing a new social pact on data, a new kind of data democracy. And we can do that in many different ways. For example, introducing in public procurement contracts data sovereignty clauses, so that every service we buy today can be about electric mobility, or when we are building a waste management system that requires the software, of course, and data being produced. It can be our telephone contracts. The data can be given back to the city in machine-readable format. And this data becomes a public good that can be opened up, of course, with privacy protection, enabling privacy, security, and ethics by design, and can be opened up also to third party, to startups, to innovators, to cooperatives, to citizens themselves, to build data-driven and artificial intelligence-driven services, which have exactly these fundamental rights at the very core. So this is, I think, a new model that is about building data commons, and it's about combining this data democracy with citizen participation and making sure that we tackle all this effort into addressing the ecological transition and transforming our cities for the better. So I think I'm actually out of time. So I will just end by saying that I think at the moment we do have an historical opportunity, because on one side we have the European Next Generation funding. So a lot of investment, 20% or more of the resilience and recovery facilities of nation states will be going into digitization. So I think that around 400 billions will be invested in Europe to basically digitalize and hopefully do that in a sustainable way. I think that Europe has a chance to put forward a model that is not the big tech from Silicon Valley, and it's not the big state from China, but it is a big democracy that puts it at the center citizen participation, preserving our rights as citizens, and also tackling, our big challenges that is in the first place, climate change and the ecological transition. And cities are going to be crucial. So we can only build this big democracy if we start from the bottom up, from cities and from citizens. And I think the power of cities here is that they can build networks of green, democratic and digital cities that are going to be able to put this European model into action. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francesca. Thank you for these very interesting insights. We're going to discuss in a couple of minutes in a panel. Vielen Dank an alle, die jetzt vielleicht auch noch dazugekommen sind. Wir werden den Vortrag, die Keynote auch gleich nochmal in einem Panel mit Marina Weißband und Thomas Türk diskutieren. Ich habe auch schon die ersten Fragen bei Slido gesehen. Wer noch nicht dabei ist, wer sich noch nicht eingeloggt hat, gehen Sie gerne auf slido.com. Geben Sie FOS 21 ein und dann können Sie Ihre Fragen stellen. Ich werde versuchen, so viele wie möglich gleich in der Diskussion heranzunehmen. Wir sehen uns gleich.